Hello and welcome to the Bald Ambition Podcast. I am your host, Mookie Spitz, and this is part 2 of The Wall. If you haven't listened to part 1, don't fret, don't disengage. I'll summarize it in just a second. And if you'd like, you can go back and check it out for more detail. But the theme of both parts of The Wall is essentially the following. If you are trying to market or sell or essentially get your ideas, your product, your service, your creativity, your opinion out there into the world through these amazing tools that are readily available and easy to use and have potentially amazing reach and engagement potential, then you are up against what I'm calling the wall. And the wall, in essence, is the tsunami of content already streaming on these devices. So we've encountered a paradox from both the vantage point of those creating and distributing this content and those on the receiving end, the consumers of this content. To give a little bit of historical context, as I did in part 1, we've evolved as a species essentially from two people side by side figuring out how to communicate with each other. We then developed tools to make our communication more permanent. Cave paintings in southern France. A mixture of creativity, spirituality, some kind of religious sensibility, along with, eventually, practical needs, specifically in business. The papyrus that we found from Egypt and Phoenicia and the ancient world, some of the hieroglyphs that we've deciphered, etched into stone, have a lot to do with business transactions. I'm here with 20 goats, and you're going to give me a bale of wheat or whatever, a gem. People needed to transact, and in lieu of having QuickBooks or Microsoft Excel, they used the permanence of physical things and our increasing capacity to represent things and ideas symbolically to communicate and to transfer that knowledge. The other development that came up, which is arguably the greatest human invention of all, is to translate and transfer knowledge and experience cross-generationally. So prior to writing things down, prior to capturing things in the physical world in this translated format, if a generation passed without communicating everything to the subsequent generation, then that generation would not be privy to it, would have to find out for themselves. And clearly, it's not hard to imagine that immense amount of information and experience were lost generation to generation. We have physical evidence that the Egyptians had batteries. Yes, they had electricity. They didn't know what to do with it, as far as we know, but we've got archaeological evidence that the Egyptians invented batteries. Look it up. So when one generation passes and another one unfolds with incomplete information, things are getting lost. When one group of people invades another, there's also a transfer, a blending, but also most significantly, a loss of knowledge, of experience, of information. Now, fast forward to the Gutenberg press, which arguably next to the internet and now artificial intelligence was the greatest invention ever. It enabled the mass production of the transference of knowledge, not only intergenerationally, but cross-generationally. You had books that became mass produced and relatively affordable. And with that, here's the thing: when the technology empowers people with the facility to better communicate, then communicators exponentially grow in their capacity and their eagerness and enthusiasm to use the technology to communicate. So with the Gutenberg press, you had an exponential boost in what? In the number of people who were actually reading, because the stuff was accessible, and an exponential boost in the number of writers writing for that very reason. And then what? Well, the next big one was probably the invention of radio, Marconi across the channel, transmitting waves through what they called at the time the ether. People thought there was an all-pervasive ether through which waves could propagate, because waves have to propagate through something, right? And then you had the Michelson-Morley experiment that disproved the ether because it tried to measure it based on the movement of the Earth through the solar system. If there's an ether, then clearly there'd be upstream and downstream to it, right? And just as a side note, quantum field theory is the essence of fundamental physics right now, and it posits that every single particle, elementary particle that we have measured, from the quarks to the neutrinos in their different masses across 3 levels. You've probably heard of the up quark and the down quark. That's the lowest energy level of quark. The strange and the charmed quark in the mid-tier energy level. And then the top and the bottom quark in the upper registry of mass and energy. Same rules for electrons that orbit the nuclei of atoms, the tau and the like, the muon, all of these fun Greek names and nonsense kind of Alice in Wonderland names. I just think the naming and branding of this stuff is actually quite good. But I digress significantly. Anyway, my point is, at least within this digression, that the ether continues. Now we have fields that are ubiquitous throughout the universe for each of these fundamental particles. So there's over a dozen different ethers, if you will, that we have postulated are ubiquitous throughout our universe. And frankly, if you ask me, that's an interim step to really understanding what the hell is going on. But the point I'm making here, Thank you for listening. Is the next big step was Marconi with the short waves. And then from just audio or auditory to visual with television. And the first television broadcast, by the way, as famously recapped by Carl Sagan in his book Contact, that science fiction book, if you've read it, was Hitler at the 1936 Olympic Games. True story. The first televised transmission for mass consumption was Adolf Hitler in the stands of the 1936 Berlin Olympic Games. One, by the way, where Jesse Owens, the African American runner, outran the Aryan minions, much to a frowning Hitler's discontent. But again, I digress. Isn't history and technology and communication interesting? So, what's my damn point? My damn point is that from cave paintings to the papyrus and the hieroglyphs, fast forward to the Gutenberg press, radio, television, and now digital communication, from computers to the internet to social media to mobile technology and artificial intelligence, the bots. Human beings are getting closer and closer to completing the circle. Remember, it all starts and ends with two people in a place physically communicating with each other. And if you think about it, we've gotten closer and closer to reproducing that experience with our technology. Look at FaceTime. Remember Dick Tracy with his watch with a video or live video on it? And that was like science fiction, super cool. The Thunderbirds. I grew up watching that TV show with the marionettes and the rockets and the real time video. Now we all have it, air quote, free on these bricks that we carry in our pockets, our smartphones. And we're able to, just like two people in a room, communicate direct. We can't smell each other. Maybe that's coming. And it's two-dimensional, and no doubt three-dimensional holographic communication will be here soon enough. But it's pretty damn close to actually being with someone in a room when you're FaceTiming or video chatting with somebody, anybody, in real time across the face of the entire planet. It's amazing. I remember back in the day, and I'm a cuss boomer, when they charged something like, what was it? Like 25, 50, 75 cents or more a minute in 1970s money to simply have a landline long distance call with friends, relatives, colleagues in another country. It was unbelievably prohibitively expensive to talk to your family outside the United States. And now you just pick up the brick in your pocket and you do a couple taps and you have a video teleconference with anyone on the planet. And again, it's completely scalable. You've got your data plan, you paid for your brick, your smartphone, and then it's off to the races. You can talk all day with anybody and you don't pay any extra for it. Unbelievable. And along the way, that's changed our model of how we think of content. And this is the subject for another 10 podcasts, but the uncertainty and confusion of the evolution of this technology, grounded in the backbone of the World Wide Web, essentially made this habit also ubiquitous, that content is for free. You just log into this website and then you get a bunch of content. And it's not really regulated, and there's no real thing as copyright because no one knows what the hell is going on here and no one really gives a shit. So, what's the big deal? We have, as a species, acquired this habit that content is free, that we as a consumer on the receiving end of digital communication, for the most part, get the things that we get as a natural consequence of using these devices. Now, there obviously are exceptions. On demand services are services, and we use digital as a conduit for summoning a car, streaming entertainment, looking at sports, all that good stuff. I get it, and everyone gets that. But what I'm talking about is engagement online. And for the sake of this conversation, going full circle back to you are a marketing or salesperson. Remember 15 minutes ago, you are a marketing or salesperson. You are the creator of content. You are doing anything online where you are trying to reach, engage, and convert people. You want to reach them, you want to get their attention amid this tsunami of content. Once you get their attention, you want to engage them. You want to keep their interest that you've worked so hard to get. And then, as a consequence of that engagement, you want to induce some kind of behavioral change, like click on this link, or buy my new novel, or learn about this, or support this candidate, or support that party or belief. And many folks are online with no ulterior motive aside from simply getting that reach. Attention has become the commodity of our age. It's not money per se. It's influence, but its influence is seen through the lens of, and here's my theme across these two podcasts, breaking through the wall. And the wall, again, is simply defined the billions and billions of megabytes of streaming, real-time, multimedia, multimodal, multi-channel content that's blasting out there on each and every application and platform and engagement type of stream. Not only are consumers consuming more content than ever before, but creators are creating and trying to distribute that content by numbers never seen before. So imagine this enormous mountain of content that just keeps getting taller and taller and taller. And on the other side of this equation, as you will, or this visual, there are hikers and mountaineers and climbers by the billions. And as the mountain grows and expands, so too does the population of eager and enthused and semi-focused, at least for about 2-3 seconds, hikers and journeyers and explorers and adventurers, and even people just sitting back on their couch taking it all in. So the volume of content is unprecedented, as is the size and enthusiasm of the audience. Now, this sounds like a perfect setup for both audience and content creator, because you've got nearly limitless supply, but you've also got nearly limitless demand. Isn't that great? So you would assume that if you wanted to get attention, you had a product or a service or some kind of content or even an opinion, that there's tens, hundreds, tens of hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, potentially millions of people who, if they saw it, if they engaged with it, would convert. They would do your bidding. They would eagerly buy your book, purchase your product or service, and everybody happy. Well, the exact opposite is the case right now, and it's not hard to figure out why. The missing link is data, and it's a metadata that you can graft on top of all this data. You have the data, which is the content itself. You have the data, which is the profile, is the predilection, is the preferences, is the multivariate and multidimensional interests of each of these audience members, of each of these consumers of content. And at least currently, there's an enormous chasm that exists between this mountain of content and all the adventurers and hikers and couch potatoes taking in the beautiful scenery. Every way that we've developed so far to connect that content with this audience has been imperfect. Some have been better than others. Let me use an example specifically in social media. I rant on TikTok, so I can give you a personal example. Uh, Within the course of only about 6 months, just by ranting in my kitchen, and I'm talking about sharing my political, cultural, artistic opinions in first person amateur videos, literally of me in my kitchen, me taking a walk, me on my little patio here in Lake Forest, California. I have accrued 15,400 followers on TikTok. And I have engendered over 241,000 likes on these videos. And if you do the math in terms of the relationship between likes and views, my bald head has appeared on likely at least 4 million phones, or more accurately, my face has appeared 4 million times on people's devices in 6 months. That's cool. Now, to give perspective, as I often like to cite, a middle schooler will set his or her fart on fire in a 12-second video clip, and that one clip will annihilate my 6 months of results metrics. That one 12-second clip of the middle school kid setting his fart on fire or her fart on fire could get 20 million views and accrue 1 million followers. No problem. It happens every day. But in all fairness, I think I've done pretty well for a bald guy ranting in his kitchen and on his patio. That's on TikTok. Here's the point of this part of the rant. I have shared the exact same videos with the exact same descriptions and hashtags on Instagram, and I have actually lost followers. I started with something like 598 followers on Instagram before I started ranting on video, and I think I'm on par. It goes up, then it comes down. I have not gained any followers. Same videos. And hardly any likes, and nobody gives a shit. I've scared people off on Instagram. On YouTube, which is the number one moneymaker for creators, and arguably maybe I haven't set up the descriptions and the hashtags well enough, which will be the second part of this mini rant within a rant. But it's mediocre on YouTube too. One video gets 1.2 thousand views and 2 comments and 5 likes. Okay. Meanwhile, on TikTok, I've had viral videos go nuts. 10, 20, 30,000, 500,000 views. One video. My videos tend to recirculate on TikTok. TikTok has a way of bringing them back to attention when the topic becomes more topical again. Whereas on Instagram and YouTube, they're just set off to die. Similarly, on Substack, I've been reposting nothing. Basically, whenever I email my own subscriber base, which is about 600 people I peeled off my contact list, of which maybe I've got 50 or 60 who actually pay attention, nothing, no real reaction. And here's the thing, no growth. So the point I'm making is twofold. On the one hand, everyone's talking about TikTok, the Chinese, data security, national security. The Chinese are superior, at least ByteDance is exponentially superior for creators and for the audience. Why? Because they better connect that mountain of content with the billions of eager hikers and adventurers and couch potato leisure streamers. And it shouldn't take any work because these platforms get to know you both as a creator and as an audience member. I get a deluge of these self-help best practice videos, ostensibly from people who want to make money off me to help me market my content. And they give me tips on how to really survive and flourish on TikTok. But most importantly, I get the same thing for Instagram and YouTube and all the platforms. And I must be doing something wrong because look, I don't have any real earned media growth. And by earned, I mean I'm not paying for any of this content to get out there. I'm just posting, no paid ads. I'm not paying the platforms to air quote boost my content, to force it down the throat of people outside their resident legacy algorithms as baseline. So what does all this mean? Well, again, it's twofold. The one is how uneven these platforms are. And I am illustrating from my personal and of one point of view the superiority of TikTok. Everyone's talking about TikTok, and everyone's talking about TikTok because they've done the best job of cracking this nut between mountain and explorer, between content creator, and consumer. I post, people see it and comment. My audience grows organically. It's fun for them. It's fun for me. Instagram, YouTube, Substack, they are dead to me and I am dead to them. Now you could say, well, Mookie, you do a shit job of marketing on these platforms. And then I tell the platforms, go fuck yourself. And the reason is, it shouldn't be that hard. I do a lot of work creating content, and the efficacy of that content for specific audiences could and should be utterly self-evident. I create content. I shouldn't be struggling with hashtags and descriptor text and categorization. I saw this video like, you're doing your Instagram all wrong if you're not categorizing your video into, get the fuck out of here. Why? The algorithms on Instagram should know better. Why? Because they see all my content and they could analyze it using, drumroll please, AI. And they similarly have a weltering of information of the consumers, of the hikers, of the adventurers. They know what they like based on their prior behaviors. This is not conceptually difficult. What this illustrates is a fail on the part of these platforms, billion dollar platforms, to get this right. Now, why does Zuckerberg suck at this on Instagram? And why is Substack also a piece of shit for earned media growth? And why is even YouTube dropping the ball on this? And the answer is I'm not paying. I'm relying on an old and antiquated, air quote, earned media model. Zuckerberg does not give a shit that Mookie Spitz is not growing on Instagram. Because if Mookie Spitz had the medal, and if Mookie Spitz had the chump change in comparison to everything else in the world to toss $100, $500, $1,000, $10,000 into the metaverse, then I'll be taken seriously. And I see absolute garbage trending on these platforms, and there's no need to scratch one's chin. A lot of these people are paying. They're paying. You see the professorial type with the round glasses, and he's telling you how fascism is coming to the United States, and he bloviates about left-leaning progressive ideology and whether he's right or wrong and whether Trump is a fascist or a hero. That dude is spending some of his money to get your attention. And then these folks reach critical mass. And same rules apply, of course, for the MAGA maniac. I'm merely illustrating that some of the lowest quality content and frankly, some of the most incendiary content, because those powerful emotions attract the likes and views. This kind of paid content obviously percolates up to the top and sucks the oxygen out of the room for people who aren't paying because Zuckerberg's making money. I get it. But that's essentially one of the points I'm making about the wall. As I arrived in part one, the old model of earned media being able to get you where you need to go is utterly collapsing. The platforms are here to make money, and it doesn't matter how good your content is. It doesn't matter how incendiary your content is. Show me the money. If you're not paying, you're going to be flying under that radar indefinitely. You might get a lucky break. And I'll segue in a second to what could work. But the point, though, is that these are monetization engines, and there are so many creators, and there's so many products and services, and there's cottage industries within cottage industries, and everyone's looking to make a buck, including and especially the platforms that host most of this garbage, that you are unable to even scratch that wall unless you throw money at it. And that's become pervasive. And it's not surprising. So, what I have learned in my own little rants and blogs and publishing ventures is that the alternative to throwing money and forcing your content into people's faces to build the critical mass that's necessary for your product service creation to be self-sustaining and create its own community is to actively participate and join in other communities. Now, this is rule number one for earned media going back a decade, 2 decades. But it's doubly, triply, exponentially more important now for all the reasons that I cite here. If you're unable or unwilling to create a grassroots relationship with various tribes on the interwebs, then you're going to be that loner. And when you reach out to these targeted communities with interests that match with your product or your service or your creation, they're going to instantly sniff you out as a promoter and as a meddler. You are bungee cording out of nowhere. You are wingsuit base jumping into a community with the obvious intent of just selling your shit, whatever it is. It comes across as manipulative and disingenuous. You're clearly not interested in the relationships, the emotional, everyday experience of your target audience, and they will shun you, and you're going to hit yet another wall. So, what's the answer to this dilemma, if there is an answer? What do you do if you're trying to market a product or service? If you have a startup company and you're trying to gain attention? If you wrote a book that you think is awesome, and even the people who would be most interested in checking it out are relatively inaccessible to you for all the reasons that I've just described. On the one hand, just to summarize, the wall itself is a tsunami of content. Everyone is inundated and overwhelmed. And on the other, people are always skulking around and trying to promote and manipulate people to gain the attention necessary to foster engagement and engender the conversion that they seek for buy my product, buy my service, buy my book, believe in my cause, go vote this way, go vote that way. It's a mess. So again, to summarize the solution, you get a bunch of money and you cram your shit down your target audience's throat. You could do the small, medium, and large. Minimum investment, I think, like 500, a few $1,000s. You're a blip on the radar, but at least the platforms will start to take you seriously. And they also know that if you've committed 500, 1,000, several $1,000s to whatever cause you are espousing, whatever product or service or idea you are trying to cram down your audience's throat, then they know that that's scalable. When you walk into that used car parking lot and you buy the Camaro from 1992, then they've created a relationship, and a year later they know they got a shot at selling you the Trans Am 2000. Same rules apply, only exponentially accelerated online. You spent $2,000 on this ad campaign. Well, you've built the system, you're locked into the infrastructure, they're going to market the marketer to market more. And yeah, toss in a few more grand and it scales. It scales with no ceiling. And that's why you see a lot of garbage that gets great reviews. And that's why you see a lot of trash that has millions of flies buzzing around it, because they went through this process and ultimately paid to play. And there's few alternatives to that aside from doing the hard work of not only creating quality content, but engendering trust and building community so that you reach critical mass. What all of this about ultimately is that Malcolm Gladwell tipping point. It's reaching critical mass so that your shit becomes self-sustaining. It takes on a viral life of its own. And don't get me wrong, it could happen. There's lots of creators who are immensely successful from simply earned media. Some of them did not pay a penny and now are rocking it. I'll repeat that. There are many creators, many products and services that just went viral because they got lucky and or they hit an emotional nerve, right time, right place, and they were off to the races. But that said, it's like winning the lottery. Nobody knows what goes viral in the same way nobody knows anything in Hollywood, to quote William Goldman. And not only does nobody know anything, retroactively it seems obvious. You look at that video, that one went, 100,000 views and the other one had 10. And you're bound to look at it and say, well, I looked left instead of right, or, the lighting was this way or that. But that's mostly bullshit, because there's a random chaotic factor that gets to the heart of much of contemporary mathematics, science, and even philosophy. there's this idea of chaos, that a small change engenders a big reaction, and it's deterministic yet unpredictable. That's the heart of chaos theory. And I can go on and on with that, and probably will in another podcast. But what I'm illustrating here is the laws of nature, the design of our universe is also at play here, because we're dealing with data. We're dealing with lots and lots of data. And the solution here ultimately, and this is the key part of my rant for the wall part 2, is my Pollyanna view about artificial intelligence. Now, what does AI do well, going all the way back to machine learning? Before the large language models and the chatbots that are able to write an essay for you in 3 microseconds that'll rival a college student's best attempt, before these bots, before ChatGPT from OpenAI blew the doors off this transformer technology in November, end of November 2022, AI was becoming very, very successful with machine learning. And machine learning is analogous to what the LLMs do, but in a slightly different kind of way. The best analogy I can find, or the best illustration for how machine learning rocks it, was provided by Eric Topol. He is the healthcare technologist, the pundit, and influencer. And in a nutshell, it goes like this. Men and women, biological males and females, have qualitatively different kinds of retinas in the back of your eye. But a human observer cannot tell the difference. And so far, medical science has been unable to describe the difference between male and female retinas. So what they did was they put hundreds of thousands of images of retinas from men and from women, and they identified each one. So they fed them into a computer with a visual memory and these advanced AI machine learning algorithms. So they pumped in 100,000 retinas from men. Hey, computer, here's a retina from some dude. Hey, computer, here's another retina from another dude. 10,000, 50,000, 100,000 times. And then they flipped it. They said, hey, computer, here is an image of a retina from a woman. Hey, computer, here's another image of a retina from another woman. 10, 100,000 times. And then they took a random retina that was not identified as male or female, and then they asked this machine learning trained, artificially intelligent computer, is this retina that I have not identified that of a man or a woman? And the accuracy of the guess, based on the data inputs of the process, was something like 98% accurate. 98% of the time, the computer guessed the right gender of the unidentified retina based on the training protocol that I just described. Now, this is fascinating for 2 reasons. The one is the machine was able to do this, and the other is the machine is incapable of telling us how it did it, because the selection criteria were all based on the training protocol, and the machine can't talk to us. It's not like I'm making this decision based on this or that. It just, air quote, knows based on the machine learning training algorithm. Is that cool? This is a fact. Look this shit up. Now, I bring it up because we've evolved to the large language model. And I can go on for 5 hours talking about the transformer technology, but suffice to say that all the accessible information on the web in the form of text, like everything written, everything from Reddit, chat rooms, and message boards to published works. And there's many, many lawsuits, copyright lawsuits that are flying around like that. Anything that these large language model trainers could get their hands on, we're talking about thousands, millions, billions of terabytes of raw data in alphanumeric and even visual form, were pumped into these machines. And just like the retinas, remember I described the retinas? Only instead of like a visual kind of matching and comparison, what the large language model transformer GPT technology did was, and it's a step-by-step approach, they chopped up all the data that they got into what's called tokens, and then they measured the probability that these tokens are associated with other pieces of chopped up information. That's very, very basic, and there's the devil in the details, and there's a million steps that I'm completely ignoring in this super high level description to you. But by chopping up all this information into what they call tokens and then measuring the relationship between these tokens, they're able to write an essay better than a college student, pass the bar exam. And how do they do that? Well, a really remedial example is, here's the sentence: Mookie is ranting on this podcast in his apartment. Now, break down that sentence. Mookie. Well, on the web, how many Mookies are there? Mookie is ranting, okay? Mookie is ranting how? Well, Mookie rants on TikTok 80% of the time. And then Mookie rants on podcasts 20% of the time, as based on the information frequency that's available online. So then when you ask ChatGPT, what is Mookie doing? Well, there's an 80% chance that Mookie's ranting on TikTok and a 20% that I'm ranting on this podcast. And then it cobbles together the answer that way. Now, once again, that's totally remedial, but it does illustrate the essential backbone of this technology. Now, why did I go in this diatribe? Well, this is cool, and maybe you didn't know that much about how these things work, at least on a super, super high level. But what I'm getting at here is this is the solution to the dilemma between the mountain and the adventure, between all that content and between its audience. We've had preference software, and we've had artificial intelligence doing this for quite some time already, like Amazon preferences, Netflix preferences, advertising online, even the bidding software has had programmatic buying, has been using this kind of selective artificially intelligent criteria. But imagine, remember I just mentioned this token, breaking things up into tokens. If all of the creator content that's out there, the products, the services, the rants, whatever content is out there is broken up, and it is broken up into these tokens. And then it's reassembled based on the known preferences of this vast audience. Then the bots, the machines can automatically, should automatically, and will automatically be able to connect whatever the hell it is you're throwing online with whomever the hell wants to see it. It's the ultimate targeted advertising. So I'll go back to a personal example. I just published a science fiction book. I think it's awesome. And I don't say that lightly. I've been working for decades to really master this craft of being able to write compelling prose and tell stories. And I've been working really hard over the last 2, especially 3 years, obsessively to master this. And everything came together this year where I wrote the science fiction novel of my dreams, which is just the first book in a series that I've already outlined, and I've already got arguably 60-70% of the second book already written. And I published June 7th. And it's on Amazon, and there's a Kindle version, and I'm ranting about it, and I'm telling you about it right now. Now, I have encountered the wall, and I'm not crying about this, and I'm not all whiny and weepy. I just find it fascinating that the obstacles that I'm encountering just to get that attention and sustain it and to convert in terms of anyone even getting interested, let alone reading my book, is exactly what I'm talking about here. So, in lieu of having a campaign budget, I'm just relying on earned media to get the word out, and it's challenging, and it's slow, and it's uncertain in terms of reaching that Malcolm Gladwell tipping point. And it's really fascinating. It's fun for me to see this in play, and it's engendered this rant, which better educates me and maybe informs or at least entertains you as to the dynamic of this whole thing. So I'm slamming into the wall. And what I'm realizing is that based on what I truly believe is the inherent quality and excellence of my novel, there's tens of thousands of people who love what's called hard science fiction. Tens of thousands of people who love some of the classic writers like William Gibson and Thomas Pynchon, love the whimsy and humor of Douglas Adams, and have the education, interest, wherewithal, time, and enthusiasm to eat my book up. If my book were handed to them and they got 10 minutes to flip through it and then got absorbed in it, I am certain as certain can be that tens of thousands of people, tens of thousands, would love my book as much as I love it. They would eat this shit up and say, "Bravo, this is awesome." But how do I connect with them? In lieu of throwing it out there for literally millions of people to fill the funnel, the marketing funnel, so it can trickle down eventually to the 10, 20, 30,000 people who would be like, wow, Johnny Fazuli and the Transfinite Reality Engine is one of the best science fiction books I've ever read. Bravo, Mookie. I can't wait to read the next one and then the next one in your series. 0.0000001% of the interwebs would love my book. I'm certain of that. But there's the wall. So I can spend 10, 20, 30, $50,000 on advertising and do it well, and I might crack that nut fairly quickly. I could languish and throw what I call throw darts in a dark room at midnight and hope I connect. And that, in a sense, is what I'm doing now, and see what happens. And I could get lucky. I could get an influencer who really loves it, and they blast in ways that even a $10,000, $50,000 marketing campaign can't. That could happen too. And that would be nice. And I'm trying. But I'm using this podcast, part 2 of The Wall, to illustrate that AI, although it will eventually take over the world and kill us all, I think until it does that, could be our ticket to ride. Because here's how I imagine this working. You've got all that content, the mountain, and you just stick the bots on it in a big way and in a focused way. And then you match that content with the profiles of billions of people who are hungry for it, and AI will do what AI does best. Remember, I talked about matching the retinas, male, female, and I talked about the large language models that are able to slice and dice content and then rearrange it probabilistically. Well, that's what it does. It'll slice and dice all the content, including my book, and then it'll rearrange it based on the profiles of these millions, billions of people. And there is a 92% chance that this person will love my book. There is a 97% chance that this other person will love my book. There's an 86.5% chance that this person will love my book. That's way better than a 0.0001% chance that this person will love my book if they even fucking see it. And here's the last part of my rant. I don't want to throw money that at this point I don't even really have, and even if I had it, into this cesspool of digital marketing and promotion. I would rather throw, instead of throwing the bad money or good money at bad strategy, I would rather throw good money at great AI strategy where the bot just pumps my shit right up to the 92 percenters, the 96 percenters, the 98, 99 percenters who, based on what they've read, they know what they've read, they've known what they've purchased, they know what they enjoy, and they know, based on the tokens and the probabilistic technology, the transformer technology, that my book would be a great match. And that, my friends, will be the future. It's already starting. And if you talk to marketers, they're using AI, and they don't need 56 minutes now to give context to their benefit. We'll match the right audience with your right content using AI. But this part two gives you context as to why that's necessary, how it's happened, and hopefully reinforces the notion that AI is not evil. AI will make all our lives so much better, and not only in marketing products and services and science fiction books, but in getting you the right job and finding you the right partner. Same rules apply for dating, for job recruitment, for going to the supermarket, for picking the best meal on your night out that you're not allergic to and that you didn't eat at lunch. So I leave you with that. AI is not inherently evil. AI is not just hype, it's mostly hype, but where AI will help us the most is in matching product and service and content with the consumer who won't resist the ad, won't be annoyed by it, but will be, thank you. This is exactly the book I've wanted to read. Thank you. This is exactly the service that I'm looking for. Thank you. This is exactly the content that I will happily give my attention to, and it's worth every penny of what I spend on it. And for the creator, or for the marketer, or for the product or service, it's worth every penny that I put into the advertisement that is engendered through this AI technology. What do you think? Like, comment, share. I'm at my hour mark. So there you go. FU Substack. I'm going to put it on there too, even if nobody gives a shit. Thanks for listening. More to come on the Bald and Bloviating podcast.